Good morning all. It's a daisy. Well, looks like we're going to have to deal with something we haven't dealt in a while. That's the good old pony tunnel, because they're all in there. So this could be interesting, trying to get through. So, anyway, as usual, good morning, one and all, and welcome to what is, I think, going to be quite a very nice Easter weekend. We've got temperatures apparently reaching up into the 18 this morning. Here's your early pony for this morning. Don't worry, we've got plenty to go. But oh dear. Anyway, look, Chthonic, hello to you. But yes, needless to say, it's going to be a very, I think, nice day today. Like I say, the sun is already shining. Oh, more ponies for you. Sun is already up and about. We've got, hang on, let me just dive into here. Some more pony action for you. Striking a pose. Oh. Cold, good morning to you. All right, let's get down here. Get into this. Yes. Oh, it's a daisy. There we go. Colin, good morning to you. Oh, there we go. Oh dear. Oh, but yes, good morning, one and all. For those of you that missed it. Oh, squelch. Nicola Smith, good morning to you. We'll just squeeze on past. Whoops, daisy. There we go. It's too early for pony action. Well, don't worry, I'm sure there's plenty of other ponies that we'll see around our little journey today, because it is an absolutely cracking morning today. It's probably going to be even better this later on. Like I say, I think we're reaching the lofty heights of around 18 degrees, so it's going to be a nice warm one today. So if you are in the UK, find yourself a pub and have your tipple of choice, whether it be a beer, a nice ice cold cider, or for the teetotalers, tea, coffee, or even a nice dressed up gin. Or should I say a nice dressed up soda water, or whatever it is now. But yes, good morning, one and all. And first of all, some news from the Ukrainian front. Some of you probably have heard this already. It happened, I think, a couple of days ago now. But I haven't done anything or said anything about it yet. But obviously, Russia has lost its flagship in the Black Sea. It's lost its Crimean flagship of that fleet, the Moskva. And oh, here we go. So yeah, you can it's not only just one ship, it's two ships, because they've actually lost I think a big like army logistical ship like a couple of weeks ago, and now they've lost another ship. Of course, they claim that it was just there was just a fire on board. It just happened to reach the magazines. We don't know how this fire started, but it wasn't a missile. It wasn't a missile that started it. And of course, this is a massive PR victory for Ukraine. Even if it wasn't them that did it, even if it wasn't, and actually the Russians for once are actually telling the truth. I'm inclined not to say that they are, because we've seen how the Russians report their media. But needless to say, even if it wasn't them, it just makes Russia look so incompetent, you know. But then again, that's what we've been seeing since day one of this conflict. Complete incompetence on the Russian part. And as I've said before, what is going on here? Now, I think maybe one day we'll get the full story of what was going on in the Russian forces. Did they have nukes on board? I don't know. But it is, from what, again, I read, I think the Moscow is very sort of capable of launching that, but who knows if they had nukes on board or not. So, yeah, a fantastic victory result for Ukraine. Even if it wasn't them who managed to sink it, take credit anyway, because I do not think the Russians would ever want to admit, if it was an accident, that it was, you know, that took down that ship. But the other obviously news is it seems that the Russians are now finally also claiming that they've finally taken Mariupol. We haven't had, shall we say, full confirmation, and there seems to be a lot of fighting still, apparently, but it seems to now that they have claimed that they've taken Mariupol, but whether they have fully or not, it may literally be like a situation where they've got, like, you know, 98 or 99% control of the city now, but there's still obviously defenders obviously still left in parts of the city. But it's just going to show you the fact that how long Mariupol has stood against Russia and its army, and the fact that it has taken them this long to be able to do it. And even then, there's a lot more cities. There is a lot more cities for them to try and do that exact same thing to. And that is not a daunting prospect for an attacker. If you've been in Russia and you've been trying to take Mariupol for this amount of time, and now you know that there are far bigger cities where you've got to go inland and at least take them to declare any sort of, you know, legitimate victory. So again, we'll have to keep a continuing eye out, see what happens on the front. But of course, now all that action now moves to the east into the Donbass region. And I think even now this is going to be an even harder fought battle, especially for Ukraine. Because it does seem that the troops in the east were, well, they were more prepared, shall we say, than certainly the ones that did the dash to Kiev in the opening days of the conflict. Oh, Jay, hi from Dublin. So, so yeah, hopefully, well, fingers crossed, we can hope this conflict comes to an end soon. But I doubt it. I very much doubt it. But the will of the Ukrainian people to fight on is now stronger than it ever was. And the will to be sort of unite the Ukrainian people. As we said before, this entire war now creates a new national mythos which will tie every single Ukrainian more strongly together. Everyone will have stories of, you know, what they were doing during this Russian invasion. It's like even today, you can still find, of course, old people. It's just, you know, this is what I did during the Second World War, and you know, those stories will exist now in Ukraine for generations, really, now. But yes, on to Boris this week, because he has not had a very, very good one. Oh yeah, and of course NATO getting stronger. I'd be remiss not to mention this either before we move on. NATO getting stronger, with Finland and Sweden joining. And of course we've had, again, the usual saber rattling from Russia of there will be, quote, consequences if you join. But I don't know if you can see this. Hang on, I can't. I've got the sun in my face, so I'm just going to try and block it so I can see the screen. Where is he? I don't know if you can see him. He's having a good scratch up against the tree. But yeah, so there's that's also happened, which again, Putin's main reason for obviously doing this was to stop the expansion of NATO, but he's just literally had you know, Finland and Sweden join. Sort of defeats the objective. Sort of massively defeats the objective of that happening. You also have had this week, Russia has now put a formal complaint to countries to ask them to stop supplying Ukraine with weapons. And to that, I just say we should just laugh. Just do what they did. Ukraine for years has been saying, hey, Russia, you signed a treaty saying you would stop supplying the rebels with weapons. Yet why do they have all these Russian-made weapons? What's going on here? And of course, pardon me. And of course, Russia has basically just replied with, weapons? What are these weapons you speak of? We haven't supplied these separatists with any weapons. Don't be silly. While all the time they're blatantly giving them weapons. As far as I'm concerned, we should just laugh in their face and just give them more weapons. You know, and quite frankly, the Ukrainians are showing very, very well that they can use them, and use them very effectively against the Russians. So as far as I'm concerned, Putin can go spin on Zelensky's finger if he thinks that, you know, the other, you know, countries should stop giving Ukraine weapons and aid. So yeah. So anyway, there's that been happening and going on. But of course, interesting news today on the local election front, because and take this with a grain of salt, but this comes from the Telegraph, or the Tory Graph, as we like to call it over here. Because, as we've said many a time before, in fact, I might actually, next week, what I might actually do for the Good Morning Walk is I might actually do or I might even do it next Wednesday, I don't know. I have to see how I feel. I want to do a stream all about how you can get involved in, you know, your local elections, your local politics, and sort of, you know, how you can make a difference in your town. Because I have been reading Paint Your Town Red. So maybe we'll have a live stream about that and how you can get involved in local politics. Because as I've continuously kept on saying, I'm really disappointed that there has been no organisation on the left to really beat the Tories in the local election. But it generally seems like that could maybe happen on its own from what we're seeing. We've had two by-elections, one in, I think it was Guildford, And we've had another one very recently. I posted the results on my YouTube feed page. I can't remember now which town it was, but essentially in both these very early by-election results, the Tories have been wiped out, to a point in the second one where the Lib Dems gained control of a Conservative council. So that's big news. You know, we're not just talking about them losing seats in a local by-election. This is, they've lost control of the council type thing. And that is very, very big news whenever that type of stuff happens. When you get a flip like that, that will worry them even more. And back to what we said earlier today with the very, 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 very worrying, shall we say, news from the Tory Graph. But like I say, take this with a grain of salt. This may be them trying to re-galvanize the, you know, Conservative supporter base, try to get them out, and we'll cover that in a bit as well. But essentially, according to them, the Tories are up to losing over 800 local council seats. Now, if you do the math, that would leave them with something like, I have to try and remember this now, I think it leaves them with something like 70 something seats. That's not a lot. That is not a lot. That's fewer seats than the Green Party. You know? So that is a shockingly number. It is a very shockingly number to admit. But they even went on to say that the Tories will lose the next general election and that Starmer will be the next PM. Which, again, is good news because we need the Tories out as quickly as possible. So if they're going to lose the next general election, roll on the next general election. But that is still, of course, as we've said, no means to sort of rest on our laurels. Mitch, good morning to you. Good morning to you. So I'll read some of the comments. Hang on. Germany needs to stop buying Russian gas, etc. That would be a massive boon to Ukraine if they can stop doing that. Check out the comments in the Express on this morning. That would be funny. I wouldn't be surprised if they are absolutely everywhere on this. Anyway, do the Tories and the racists not realise that smugglers have access to more than just boats? Do they think people will just that people have just fled landlocked countries? Jesus wept. Yeah, exactly. And remember, this this new announcement hasn't gone down well, but that's again something else. But we'll get off topic if I start discussing that. Germany planning to do that, but it'll take a few years. Yes, it will. Say the Tories are booted. Do you guys know if a coalition government could implement PR? Yes, but it will take very much a political will to do it. And there is that will at the moment. Everyone and their mothers know in Parliament that election reform is coming. And as I've said before, local Labour parties or the local, have now said to the, to the national organisation, we want a PR representative system. We want PR. We want voting reform. And Labour has to sort of pay attention to this now because we've got over 300 local organisations pushing for this. This, obviously, the vote happened at the last Labour conference, and of course it got beaten, not by anyone else. It was the unions that voted this down. But then when the unions went to their conference, everyone kicked off at them and saying, why did you vote this down? So even now the unions are behind the next potential vote on this. So it could be very, very likely coming up to the next general election, we do see some form of electoral reform, especially switching over to PR. So, yeah, I think that's entirely possible. And I think if Labour does it, then the rest of the parties will follow. I don't think you would see the Lib Dems not join in, and other parties as well. Bakura. Boris isn't the first PM to commit a crime in office, but he's just the first to get caught, and all that shows how incompetent a person he is. Very true. Very true. So yeah, it really does come up to that point, because everyone knows it's coming. We just did a piece about the House of Lords. Even the people in the House of Lords know that the House of Lords needs to be reformed, but they can't actually agree on how they themselves need to reform it. We've had a guy who wants to reform the House of Lords, but every time he tries to pass a bill through the House of Lords, there's another, he labelled him as his foe. But then when he was asked, and remember, this is a Conservative peer, he says, I want reform as well. I just don't think his reform is going far enough. So, it says everything. And as I said before, as much as I would love our the House of Commons voting system to be reformed, the far easier win for these for the electoral reform people to go after is actually the House of Lords, because everyone agrees the House of Lords needs to be reformed. And I think any reform does need to include the House of Lords to get an actual voted, elected body. And I think it needs to, as we've said before, become a house of regional representatives, and making sure that all the regions have, the exact same potential number of people that they can vote in, and obviously do this by PR. So, maybe take Yorkshire, again, example. I don't think this is how it would actually work. There's probably people who are far, far more into the electoral reform to say how this would actually work. So what you would do is you'd have, say, Yorkshire would have like five representatives, and obviously you'd have it through PR. So maybe through PR, Labour ends up with 3, maybe the Conservatives end up with 1, and then you might get the Lib Dems with with 1. Maybe that's how it would work. But that's how I'd sort of like to see it work out. Again, like I say, there are probably a lot more people with a lot more know-how, of course, electoral reform, how that would probably work out and be sort of a lot more fairer. So I'm very open to say that's probably wrong. And, maybe, I don't know, Yorkshire would have more than that. Maybe it have like 10, or all the different regions would have, a different set amounts. I don't know. So, but yeah, needless to say, electoral reform does need to happen. And of course, it's not just at a national level either. If you did bring electoral reform in for PR for a national election, there's no reason why we couldn't extend this as well to local elections as well. I think that's entirely possible. Local elections would certainly be a bit harder, because as I've said before, the average voter turnout at a local election is around 30 to 35%, and in some other towns and cities it's even lower than that. So yeah, it doesn't take a lot it doesn't take a lot to get people out to actually vote for you, to have a massive swing in your favor. So ultimately, that would be, I think, very good. And I do want to see, obviously, the system changed. But at the moment, as I've always said, we've got to play, you know, in the system we are in at the moment. And that's first past the post. Love it or hate it, or, well, many of us do hate it. That's the system we've got to play in. And we have to play by those rules. Yes, I agree, they suck. But, you know, you don't go into a game of Monopoly with the rules of Clue. So, you know, that's how you need to play the game. If you're going to play Monopoly, you need to play by Monopoly rules. You don't go in and start playing Clue at a Monopoly board. And I think that's what a lot of I think that's what a lot of people on the left do seem to get the opinion of, that that's how they can play, and that, you know, everything will work out. No, we need to play by first past the post rules. And yes, I know, sucks, but it's not impossible to sort of change some of these things. Like I say, we saw the red wall change, these very, very safe, you know, Labour seats change to Conservatives. Another prime example of how much, you know, local campaigning and getting out there and talking to people works. Georgia in America, because no one was expecting Georgia to flip blue. No one was expecting Georgia to fit blue, to turn blue, and yet, what happened? You look at what happened. It was an organisation that went out, got all the, you know, they spent 4 years out there working to fight against Trump, against the Republicans, and they flipped Georgia blue. No one was expecting that. Everyone was thinking that if a state does go blue, it might be Arizona, or it might be Texas, maybe, who knows? But no one was expecting that, and that happened because of the campaigning that local groups did on the ground to get people registered to vote and, well, talk about the issues that are going on, that they can vote, that they can do and talk about. So be under no illusion, and when I say this, that America's, you know, voting system, given the fact you've got like things like gerrymandering going on in America, make no mistake, it is possible to flip these places. Now, it may be that they have to go yellow, which is why we've seen the Libs and the Labour talk about having a pact of non-aggression, which I think will be good, but I think it needs to go further and say, we're not going to run in these seats, you don't run in these seats, but you tell your guys to vote for us, we'll tell our guys to vote for you. But there needs to be actual strategic organisation about that. It can't just be a non-verbal agreement, or else it, you know, doesn't happen. Mitch, I really wish Texas would go blue. My hope is Republicans will stay home, since they've been screaming about election fraud that doesn't exist. Yeah. Very true. You've got, well, in America, you've got an entirely different set of issues. And, you know, as I say, you know, we've got our crazies over here in the UK. You've got your crazies over there in America. But yeah, it's a crazy time in America. And this is another thing I want to point out, because it's not just here where people don't pay attention to local politics. It's also in America. Like, they don't pay attention to, like, the state representatives, you know, how, you know, you can get like a governor elected and what that state's representation looks like in the state house. Or, you know, you've got elections for like local school boards. And you are seeing the Republicans push massively and go after trying to take local school boards. And that is, local politics in America. Of course, we don't have that in the UK. We've just got our the local council elections, and of course, we've now obviously got the big metro mayors, which again, South Yorkshire mayorship will be coming up for election. So again, we've got to make sure that we get the Labour candidate in and he continues the actual fantastic work that Dan Jarvis has been doing. Like I say, setting up a council-run organisation to help set up cooperative-owned businesses and re-establish bring the bus network and the travel network back into sort of public hands. We've seen other Labour mayors follow in those footsteps as well. So something that we definitely sort of need to continue on that. Oh yeah, the Fixed Term Parliament Act. Yeah, that is probably something that's going to go as well. But yeah, that brings its own whole set of issues when that gets removed, because if Boris manages to remove that and he sees his chance to go for an election when he has like even the slightest bit of like positive stuff, then he'll go for it. But there's the interesting thing that we have seen though, and this comes from especially the local by-elections that the Lib Dems won. We saw the issue of localism really come to the fore. And this is where sort of the Lib Dems can really, really win in these conservative areas. Because they are not, the Lib Dems, they're a real centrist party. They're very sort of centre-right when it comes to economic stuff, but the more, shall we say, socially left when it comes to sort of other issues. They're very, very sort of in the centre, but that gives them a huge advantage, especially at local and even, hang on, there we go. Local and even national elections, because our local election, they can just go, well, this is all the stuff we want to do locally. Great, excellent, crack on. And hence why they can also appeal to the more moderate conservatives, which is again what they really need to sort of win. And I think that seems to be their game plan going into the next general election as well, that they'll look at all these different issues. So you look at like the rural seats that they'll target, and they'll bring up like local issues that are affecting rural communities because they can. And then in a town or a city, they'll change their strategy completely to try and win that seat. So they are in a very, very interesting position going into the next general election. But even they know their wins shouldn't come at Labour's expense. They need to be at the Conservatives. So even they know and recognise that. And I would hope that we would see a more formal pact. I don't know if we will, but it's hopeful. Like I say, one of the big hopes I've seen very recently is in Canada, where you've had, I think it's the NDP, I want to say the name is, who have sort of done have what they call, I think it's a pact of confidence, where they'll go, we'll support your government so long as you do these list of things. And all these things are very, very progressive. And so far, so good. It seems to be working. So it's very, very possible that if we got, shall we say, something like that into work with the Labour and the Lib Dem Alliance, could be possible. But the other thing we need to do is the Greens need to get in on that as well. And I think the Greens, if they did that, they could potentially stand a very good chance. But it's what do they do at a national election, because they've only ever had that Brighton Pavilion, and it's been very, very much on the personality of Caroline Lucas, and I think they have to roll the dice. I think Caroline Lucas should still run, but not in Brighton Pavilion. I think they look at where else could she run where she would win, but also who could they field in Brighton Pavilion to make sure they still keep that seat to get, more than one Green Party MP in Parliament. I think that would be interesting to see if they could do. So we're going to have to see. But he's a big risk for them. A big, big risk. Can the Tory party decide not to hold elections? No. They can't. There has to be an election every 4 to 5 years. That is written down. They cannot basically do that. At that point, the Queen can just step in and just say, I'm closing Parliament, we're holding elections. So that is what essentially the Queen can do. And they can, and trust me, all the opposition would take the Tories to the High Court, as we saw in sort of the proroguing of Parliament, well, not last year, but 2 years ago now. Boris pretty much lied to the Queen about doing it, and he got caught out for that. So there is nothing the Tories could do to not hold an election. They have to hold one. Pretty Bird, the Queen can do that. Yes, she can. That's why all the prime ministers, whenever they have a general election, they go to see the Queen and they tell her, Your Majesty, we would like to have an election. Can we have an election? That's what really happens. That's what really goes on. In our medieval voting system. So yeah, there is that of course aspect, and I think pretty much everyone would be behind the Queen going in and just closing Parliament so we can have an election. Like I say, it's not the first time she's done it. She's done it before in Australia as well. I think it was was it the early noughties or something like that? They couldn't pass a budget or something like that. So what happened was, the Queen closed Parliament. She appointed a governor who passed the budget, and then went, "Okay, here's your new election. Go at it." And that's what happened. I can't remember when that exactly happened though. In Australia, I'm sure an Australian viewer will tell us when that happened. But I don't think it was that too long ago. So yeah, there is a sort of a very interesting rules in around that, but yeah, no, they can't stay in forever. They have to have a vote. Even Tories would rebel at that point if Boris Johnson decided, I'm not having an election. They would throw a fit. And again, it wouldn't look good for them. Oh, David Juardo, hi everyone. Hello to you, David. Welcome to the Good Morning Walk. So yeah, I don't know if you can actually hear the birds. They are very, very loud this morning, chirping as they are away. Oh, this is where I'm glad I brought my wellies. I don't know if you can see the mud here. Nearly. Oh, close. Close. But yes, I do want to do a stream about sort of local elections and how sort of you could get involved sort of in your local election. And I want to try and make it not just for people from the UK, but I think there's lots of stuff that people can sort of pick up from stuff around the world that's happened that you could bring to your own local area. Yeah, I say the birds are out in force today. But yes, what's going to happen with Boris? I don't know. Given the fact that, and again, I'd encourage you to first of all, even if you don't have a Conservative MP and you live in the UK, email your MP, tell them to get rid of Boris, that, you know, he can't stay and that he should resign. Put the pressure on them, even if they're a Labour MP, because they will listen. And especially if they're a Conservative MP, if they, you know, come back after the bank holiday and their, you know, their inboxes are full of emails telling them to get rid of Boris over Partygate, it will send a very, very clear message that the public is not happy. And I hope, my sincerest hope is that's what's happening this weekend. You know, organisations getting together and say, we don't want Boris, get rid of him. Because if you've just had, as we just said, that news that in the Tory Graph of all places, you know, the Tories are set to lose 800 seats at the local election, and then they're on course to lose the next general election to Keir Starmer. That should, I'd hope, be enough of a wake-up call for the Tories to think, well, okay, now we need to get rid of Boris, because he's now gone from an electoral positive to an electoral liability, and we need to get rid of him. That's what I'd hope, at least. But then again, 'tis the Tories, so we'd have to see. But then again, of course, you've got who would replace Boris now? And as I've said, I think the field's now completely open. I think it's now an open field. I don't know who you're going to be your top contenders. I really don't. Not only that, you've got Jacob Rees-Mogg saying that, you know, that Boris is the best the party's got, and all the other contenders are just worse candidates. What's this? Bakura, honestly, I don't think the Boris community via a sex crime would get rid of him. And let's face it, Boris wouldn't be surprised if he had. But the thing is, Bakura, it's the anger about this is palpable. The fact that he's been fined and he's probably going to receive multiple fines. You know, there's rumours he was at 6. So the chances are he could receive 6 fines. And every single time he gets fined, that anger is going to get much, much worse. You've got a case of a kid, a uni student. I think it was the University of Nottingham. He had a house party and he got fined 10 grand. 10 grand, and then got kicked out of uni. And that Boris has been fined 50 quid. And that's it. So trust me, the more Boris gets fined, the more this anger really starts to boil over, and I think it's already boiled over. The public anger about this is just palpable at the moment. And if you don't think that this carries on into the May local elections that we've got coming up, oh, it's going to be a very, very sad time at Tory HQ on May the 6th. A very, very sad time. They are going to get rid of Boris in a heartbeat, I think. He has to. But like I said, he's the only MP who can get caught showing how incompetent he is. Very true. But again, the Tories knew who they were voting for. Like I say, the whole reason the Tories put Boris in power was because he was the guy who could unite a lot of, pull a lot of the people from Labour. Like I say, this was the guy who was built his entire career on being the mayor of London, getting elected mayor of London. And that was Boris's big idea. I can unite all these different groups behind me. And in 2019, he sort of arguably proved he could. Like I say, in 2019 was really a mess of an election. It's not just one thing, should we say, that won it for Boris, not even Brexit. But of course, Brexit was a major thing. But again, as we've said before, it's all about Boris having the ability to be able to unite all these different people behind him. And again, he promises them everything while giving them nothing. And the Tory party is now so fractured with all these different groups that come a next leadership election, it is going to be a bloodbath. And even then, there is no leader that can guarantee they can keep all these other factions in check. We saw the trouble that Theresa May just had in trying to control one, the ERG. There's now 8 or 9 of these different groups that are now in play. So make no mistake. All these different groups are going to try and get their guy in. And if their guy doesn't get in, they're going to be very, very upset. Ooh, there we go. Very, very upset about, what goes on. So, the writing's on the wall for a civil war. You think Steve Barker? Baker. So yeah, I always get them mixed up. Baker Barker. But yeah, could be very interesting. Very interesting times once Boris is gone. Very interesting times once Boris is gone. Yeah, how often do the ERG publish their research? They've never published any research paper, as far as I know, Cal. They've never published one, as far as I'm aware. Nope. Nice big bee. But yeah, it is something to look forward to and something to watch with glee as the Tory party rips itself to shreds. But yeah, don't worry, we will be reporting on that with a lot of enthusiasm as that happens. A lot of enthusiasm as that happens, and egging them on. Oh. So, but yeah, is Boris going to go? I think at the moment he is safe, but it's entirely dependent on public response. And Boris is going to receive more fines. chances are more stuff about Partygate could come out. There's already one Tory MP saying that's the case. There's more stuff to come out. We need to get rid of him now. I'm putting my letter in of a vote of no confidence. And bear in mind, in Partygate Part 1, as we are calling it, we were 2 letters off. We were 2 letters off having that vote of no confidence. So we came close. We came so close to it happening. But I think now you take into account what's going to happen at the local elections. You're taking the fact that already the Tories are expecting a massive kicking, losing over at least 800 seats. Most probably to the Lib Dems in the south, but possibly like the Tories, not the Tories themselves, possibly to like Labour in the north, but also to the Greens potentially as well. If I were the Greens, if I were serious to the Green Party, I'd be looking at where's our strongest ties and then going to the Lib Dems and going, do you want to do an electoral pact? You know, that's what I'm shocked that the Greens haven't done, to be honest, because that's what I'd be doing. I'd be talking to Ed Daly and going, "Hey, look, Ed, we need to talk. You know, where's your strongest place? Where's our strongest place? Let's do a deal here." So in the next couple of weeks, it's really unpredictable how any of this is really going to play out. Because I've said before, I've said on Wednesday, we've been here before. You know, we've done the dance of Boris watch before. Who knows what's going to happen? We really don't know. He could get the boot tomorrow. He could get the boot next week. Maybe the letters of no confidence come in, but he wins the vote of no confidence. It's generally hard to predict what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. But I think a big indicator, of course, is going to be the May elections, and those are in 3 weeks' time. So it is not going to be long. It is not going to be long before we see essentially what the consequences are going to be to the Tory party, and just how much, shall we say, of a panic they may go into. Because there's one thing you can always guarantee about the Tory party: they have the mechanisms of the 1922 committee for a reason. They're the most quote-unquote successful party in the world because they know when it's time to get rid of a leader. And the political calculation is when is it time to get rid of him? That's the big key indicator. We don't know. Yeah. Lots of ponies to finish off today with. Lots of ponies. So yeah, it could be quite interesting in the next couple of weeks. It's difficult to say what's going to happen. Morning. It's difficult to say what's going to happen, but needless to say, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting what happens in the next couple of weeks. I think they're all going to get some water in a moment. There you are. There you go. I know why you're here. I know why you're really all here. You come for these guys. Don't have anything. I don't have anything, so you're running out of you're out of luck there, my friend. Oh, thank you very much, Catho G. Oh, hang on. How much does Northern Ireland rejection matter to Johnson, given the vote on the protocol there in 2024? A lot, a lot, a lot. We don't know how those elections are going to run. Obviously, the DUP, I think, are probably going to put out a very strong push to get, or at least to keep their majority. But then we have seen, of course, a very strong indication that they will lose at the next local election, which could have some very, very big consequences in terms of like the peace process in Northern Ireland. And of course, as you said, there's a vote in 2024 in the Northern Ireland Assembly on the protocol. And if they're in charge, well, things could get very, very interesting indeed. He's having a nice scratch against the tree. But yes, ultimately, things could get very interesting very quickly in Northern Ireland. Needless to say, those elections are the one to watch. Those elections are definitely the one to watch on. If you plan to stay up, I don't know. I don't even know myself if I'd bother staying up on local election night. Although we might do, I don't know. Well, sort of watch the results roll in, as they say. But needless to say, I think it's going to be it is going to be a complete hootenanny. I think in the Conservative, well, in the Lib Dem HQ, shall we say, because they're the ones who are going to massively benefit from this complete and utter Tory collapse. Election night stream, possibly. I have to think about it. In fact, I might throw out the idea, see if anyone's up for doing an election night stream. I'll have to see. I'm just trying to think, when do we normally start getting results? I think it's very much a 10 o'clock, I think, is normal when we start getting the initial results, but we'll have to see. But yeah, I think it's going to be it's certainly going to make for some interesting watching. Like I say, it's going to be fun. But one of the things, again, when it comes to like local elections, so many different things to talk about, because one area might be having different issues to a completely different area, so you've got completely different issues. Like I say, in my own hometown of Barnsley, put on me Barnsley accent for a moment. in town, we got a little bit of a crossroads called Kingston. And for some unknown reason, they thought it was a smart idea to put a massive mega school at the edge of one of these crossroads. And essentially, in the morning, if you're going to either Leeds or Sheffield by car, it's an absolute nightmare. Even worse if you're coming back at tea time. So in their wisdom, they decided to get rid of this crossroad and build a new contraption called a gyratory. And it's currently being built. It ain't been built yet, but it's almost ready. And hopefully that's going to solve the problem. And of course, one of the local councillors got elected last local election to try and stop that. Of course, he sort of failed in his efforts. Whether he gets re-elected next election, we don't know. But it'll be interesting to say at least. There you go. That's my It's my report on Barnsley local politics in an authentic Barnsley accent. So, yes, as always, have an absolutely fantastic, long weekend. Like I say, obviously yesterday's was Good Friday, so you've all probably had yesterday off or whatnot. So yeah, have an absolutely fantastic weekend. I'm probably off myself today to a beer festival, I think, at some point. I don't know. I need the time. If you're watching, I need the time and the location. So yeah, have an absolutely fantastic Easter, everyone. Have an absolutely fantastic weekend. Like I say, it's going to be absolutely cracking weather. Like I say, I think next week we might not even need my jacket on. We might just wear me t-shirt. And to be honest, I've had my wellies on today, but I don't know if we'll even need my wellies on. So, as always, thank you very much for joining me. We'll see you next weekend for another Good Morning Walk.